you have DPMA for the first year. You get 2 years worth of it. So if you come back to work, but something happens, you have to go back out, you can get another year.
Just not consecutive.
Yeah. But the Harvey, Wyatt, and the Alpha policies, they pay on top of the Delta policies.
Right.
So you're not doing one or the other, where sometimes policies like, well, they have to pay out first and then we'll only cover up to the difference when up to a maximum. That's not what's happening here. Welcome to Wiser Retirement Podcast. Are you curious about how to plan for medical disability as a commercial airline pilot? I'm Casey Smith. Today, I'm joined with Shauna Theriault. Each week, we bring you practical advice on retirement, investing, and planning for your financial future. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast wherever you're listening. Let's get started. Hey, Shauna.
Morning.
So just to be clear, I mean, yes, we're talking to airline pilots today, but I think the principles here apply to anybody.
Of course.
In any career, but airline pilots are a large segment of our client base. And I think this is a topic that's come up in a lot of our planning sessions on how to handle disability. And a lot of wealth management firms, they totally gloss over this.
Right.
But it's really important. You're more likely to be disabled than dying early.
Right. And everyone focuses on the life insurance, but really statistically, You're more apt to become disabled. And then, and I don't mean this in a rude way, but if you're not working and then you're still here, we hope, but then you could have medical issues where now your loss of income and the expenses go up even.
Yeah.
So that's where it's usually, maybe expenses go up because you have healthcare issues.
I find that most people who are coming to a wealth management firm probably are pretty good with budgeting. They live well below their means. But for people who are spending every dollar that comes in and don't feel like they have extra,
right?
This could be really debilitating for your family.
Completely.
If all of a sudden you had a 50% pay cut.
Well, and if you can't afford the disability because you're spending every dollar, that won't be good either.
Yeah, that won't be good either. That's right.
So it's like one of those rules, like with long-term care, it's like the people who need it can't afford it, and the people who can afford it don't need it because they can self-insure, kind of thing. But
true.
Yeah,
and also too, we don't work with as many people who work at regionals, airlines, partially because they're building their careers. They're typically younger. They're invincible, but we have a couple of clients that have medically retired from regionals,
sure.
And they're basically receiving nothing from the company. It only paid out for a certain time period. So if you're just beginning your career, you don't really think about things like this, but they were good savers. Thankfully, they worked a long time at a regional, but they received no benefit. So it's really just the major airlines, Delta, American, United, Alaska, Southwest, that have these type of benefits, and they're all a little different in how they approach it. I think I would note here that Southwest is probably puts more burden on the pilot as far as payment for that, where American and Delta United have more company paid coverage, but they all kind of slice it up differently about how much is sick bank in the beginning and how much is insurance and how much is just self-pay. But after that first year or two, they all kind of gravitate to that 50% number.
Yeah. 50% of pay.
But anyway, so continue this conversation. Why is this so important for pilots and specifically?
Well, that's their livelihood. They have the rigorous medical each year. And if they can't, pass that or something happens, then they can't fly. They can't make their income.
Right.
So, I mean, they can go work somewhere else potentially, but that's not what they've trained to do. And the income is so high for a lot of them. It's just covering their loss of income.
Yeah.
I would think the biggest thing is because of the medical.
Right. And occasionally there could be simulator jobs where sometimes those require you keep a medical, even though you're flying a box. There's management positions. There's working in training or admin, not admin, but more administrative type positions.
Does some of them do manuals, like flight school teaching and things like that?
Yeah. Not so much flight school. You've done that already,
right.
but yeah.
Well, I'm saying instructing.
Instructing in the training department, but there's also people who work in safety. who are writing the manuals for the airplanes and updating manuals, things of that nature, which is more of a desk job than it is a flying job.
Sure.
But sometimes
I'm assuming that doesn't pay as well, though.
No, it does.
It does. Okay.
Sometimes it pays
okay.
better.
Okay. Well, that's good to know.
Sometimes it pays better, but so a lot of times those jobs are taken. But yeah, but I wouldn't depend on any of that.
Well, there has to be a job opening, right?
There has to be a job opening. And in some cases, in some airlines, you have to be a qualified line pilot or else the contract basically puts you on disability. So it depends on how your union contract is written too and what your options are. At a smaller regional, yeah, you could probably do that just fine.
Yeah.
And take that position. But the bigger airlines have more guardrails up.
But the medical is so rigorous. So, I mean, there's the definitions are so, I mean, they should be. I mean, they're flying planes.
The first thing I would say is make sure you're going to the right doctor. I never went to the young guy who just started. I always went to the old guy that was like rinse and repeat.
Absolutely.
You don't want someone trying to find a reason why you can't fly, you know?
Right.
But I'm not saying do anything dishonest. Disclose all your events.
We care about the safety of people. That's what the whole point is.
Just make sure you're going to a person who's not gonna be too cautious. So all right. So let's talk a little bit about understanding the risk. So obviously there's short term and there's long-term disability.
Mm-hmm.
So it is exactly what it sounds like, right?
Right. It just covers you for a shorter period of time and then the long-term. And that's true for all industries, right? So you have coverage for something happens, if you have that in industry. So if something happens for a shorter period of time versus something that's going to be longer, over a year potentially,
right?
Then typically the long-term kicks in and usually lasts to age 65.
So in the major airline world, short-term disability can cover you for up to 2 years. Pretty well.
Right. And they refer to it as like temporary disability instead of short-term. I think it's a similar definition. Thing. Right.
Long-term would kick in after the year. In just normal jobs, typically short-term is a few months.
Yeah.
And then long-term
a few
kicks
weeks.
in.
Right.
Right. So short-term disability, I think the most common use for that is when moms go to have babies.
Right.
Otherwise, you should have enough savings to cover a couple of months worth of expenses.
It really just gets you through that elimination period to get into the long term.
Right.
And helps cover that gap for you.
You do have union versus non-union. There are benefit differences. So what I would say is that typically at non-union shops, I see the disabilities being much, much less. It's not as focused on. I feel like those airlines focus maybe a little more on pay. No one really thinks about this stuff. That's why we're doing a podcast on it.
Sure.
Right. But even at some of the union shops, like Southwest Airlines, it's still there, but I've noticed that there's a lot more burden on what you pay. You can make it very expensive to get the same coverage as what the majors are offering.
Well, and honestly, the main difference between paying it yourself and having the employer paid obviously is the cost. So the cost is that's really rich if an employer pays it, but how it's taxed is different too. I think it's important to note. So, if you are paying it on your own, any portion that you pay on your own, whether you're adding more or the company just doesn't offer it, if you claim those benefits or if you need those benefits, they become tax-free to you because you paid the premiums versus an employer provided. That's still really great. They're providing it. They're paying the premiums, which costs more, the
chances of actually being on disability, you'd rather the company be paying for it and just pay the tax when you get it.
Exactly. Because then it's taxed to you.
But if you have to get your own policy, then yes, at least it'd be tax-free.
Exactly. At least if you get benefits, it's tax-free.
So let's talk about, loss of medical. Why is this essential for pilots? You touched on it a minute ago. Is because pilots have a annual physical,
yes,
right, or every 6 months in some cases you have a physical, and if you have high blood pressure, you have high cholesterol, there excess of that, you're not going to be able to fly.
Right.
If you have to go on certain medications, you shouldn't be flying. So these are all things that can set you to the sideline pretty quickly. And I think most pilots know this, but I would never just go into your normal doctor and say, "Hey, we're going to prescribe this." I'd run everything through my air the pilot doctor is what I call
Right.
it.
Right.
I would run everything through the AME, I guess is the designation. But I would run everything through him or her to make sure that this is good. ALPA has the Airline Pilot Association. They actually have a medical section that you can contact them and get advice on. Yes, you can take this, but no, you can't take this. I think even AOPA may even offer. That's more for private pilots. I think they may even offer some guidance on the medical front as to what you can and can't take. But you definitely need an advocate. Oklahoma City is where all the pilot stuff or all the medical stuff is handled for the FAA, and they're really behind. And so if you don't do it right, or if you don't have a doctor who can help expedite the process, you could be unnecessarily sitting on the sidelines for a while. We have an American pilot that I think he was out for an extra almost year, just because people couldn't coordinate things very well.
Wow.
So you have to be careful that you stay on top of it. Unfortunately, you just can't go over there and knock on the door. They won't see you. So you just have to be very careful in the steps that you take after you've gotten a diagnosis of something.
Interesting.
I also will say, I remember when I flew at a regional airline, I remember being shocked when one of our clients, who is also a fellow pilot of mine, went out with heart surgery. And I found out that our insurance, our disability insurance, the older you got, the less it covered.
Really?
Yes, it was the opposite. He was getting hundreds of dollars per month.
Wow.
He was in early 60s, and he was getting hundreds of dollars per month in disability because the older you got, the less they would pay out.
Because they just assume that you're aging? You're
assuming you're aging out, I guess. I don't know. It should be really the opposite, because your pay should be higher.
Well, your pay should be higher. And then, of course, if you're getting older, that's when you get sicker, right?
Correct. But there was a percentage, but then there was a max. And that max kept dropping. And I guess the union...
In the long-term disability policy? Interesting.
So I guess the union negotiations just didn't pick up on that. I think it was corrected later on in further contracts, possibly. But I was shocked by that. I was like, holy cow, this is a big problem.
That's a problem.
That's when I started paying very close attention to disability policies and retirement plans.
Yeah, definitely need to read the fine print to understand what it is you have.
Especially the union negotiated ones. That's not normal. If he worked at GE or Home Depot, that would not be the case.
No, it's a percentage.
But yeah, so someone did not handle that well in negotiations. So disability insurance, let's talk about this. Own occupation. Explain that to us.
So there's own occupation or any occupation. So this is true with pilots and also any corporate job if you have this. So own occupation is if you cannot do your own job, it will pay out. So the function of your own job, obviously flying planes, if you can't do that, then it would pay out. Any occupation is if you can flip burgers or do something else. That's, it depends on the definitions. If you can do another position or another job, then you may not be considered disabled.
Correct. So that is what...
and that's huge for anyone. You want to know if it's your own occupation.
So that means if you buy a supplemental policy, you're going to want to make sure that it's not that.
Right.
That it's related to your specific job.
Yes, definitely ask that question. Make sure it's own occupation, meaning your own and not any occupation.
Before we continue, do you want to make the most of your airline's 401k plan? We've created free 401k allocation guides for most major airlines to help you do just that. Download yours for free at pilotretirement.com. Now back to the episode.
There are a couple of companies, including the Airline Pilots Association, that offer disability insurance specifically to pilots. Harvey Watt is one of them.
Right.
And then obviously buying it through ALPA. Is another. And we'll kind of come back to that in a minute. Let's talk about a little bit about why we need this. Why would you need to add disability insurance on top of what you have already?
On top of the disability you already have, if it's not enough? Well, you need to look at a financial plan to say, okay, because everyone's situation can be different. It's not one,
Mhm.
just like when we run any client's financial plan, how much life insurance, how much disability, all of them can be different. If someone is a super, super saver and they don't spend that much, they may not need to add different. We want to
Right.
make sure. So what we typically do in the planning, and your advisor should do this, and if they're not, then, maybe seek another, is to, let's say you go on disability and your income comes out of the plan. What do you need to drop in to make sure that you don't have a change of lifestyle? You still need to be saving for retirement. I don't know that you need all of the necessary excess. So a lot of pilots, I'm speaking about pilots, generally are saving a lot in their retirement plan, but also to taxable accounts because they just the income that they have generally, unless they spend more. A lot of them have more income than they need. You don't necessarily need to be building the same huge nest egg that you were to have a bunch of excess when you die at age 95. It depends what your goals are, right? So it really depends. If you really, I want to leave money to kids, then maybe you do need to do that. But in looking at the full financial plan, if you do have a disability, you still need to make sure that you can cover your current expenses, that you're still saving for retirement, because eventually that income will stop from disability. And then you have to live off, investments, pensions, Social Security, whatever that is for you.
And the Delta Airlines plan, they have a great benefit that they're still going to contribute the 17, soon to be 18%.
Right.
Regardless, not based on what the disability is, but based on what you had made the years prior. So you'll continue to get that percentage going in. You won't be able to put in your 23.5 or 30,000, right?
Right.
But you at least get that going in for you. That's not normal.
No,
other airlines don't do that.
Well, and most companies don't do that. Most companies don't even put in 17, 18% for you, whether you contribute or not, or even if you do contribute, and then they certainly don't continue it if you become disabled. So it is a benefit of being an airline pilot for sure. But you still want to make sure that what happens in your plan, you want to emulate in your plan. Let's say I have a disability, a short-term or a long-term disability. Short-term, normally, like you said, you can, get through that if you can go back to work.
Right.
You should have enough savings or be able to bridge for a period of time and then, correct going forward. But if you can't do that, what does that truly look like? I mean, that's really important to look at it.
The easiest test is cut your income in half, your aviation income, if you're a dual income family. And can you live on that? That's,
but even if you can live on that, are you still putting enough away that when it stops that you can live?
It depends on the situation.
You know what I mean?
Some of the majors, yes. Other situations, normal people, no, that's right. You're still not going to be able to save money.
Right.
Your savings, your retirement savings would probably come to a stop.
Yeah. You're getting half that income and you're living off of it, but then it's going to stop eventually. Yeah. And where are you going to take the income from?
I think a lot of people assume that it's temporary. You get back to work eventually.
Yeah.
But if it's a permanent disability, then that your whole life is changing at that point.
Right.
There are ways to supplement it though. Again, we don't sell any of these policies because we're a fee only firm. But you can buy additional disability. I have very few people that buy additional disability.
Agreed. Most don't.
Small business owners will buy a disability policy themselves,
right?
But not regular employees. That's not normal. And also regular employees, I would say, meaning just normal everyday, usually cover 65% of your income, not 50%.
Yeah.
And there's a max, so you have to pay attention to that max.
Yeah. So
even in our own policies here, one day,
right.
I think it was like 2 years ago, I was going through, it was like, oh, we have great disability or a long-term disability for everybody. And then I realized that the max was like $2,000 a month.
Right.
I was like, oh, no wonder this is so cheap. It's like, no, we gotta change this. So we have at my company, we do 2 tiers. We have tiers for what I would call staff, and then advisors. Pays are much higher, and so
and you pay for it for us, so we appreciate.
Yes,
that.
We cover our company covers 100% of it,
and we appreciate that.
But we have 2 different tiers, so that way I can have 2 different fees, so it drops the cost a little bit. Someone who's making $60,000 a year versus somebody making $200,000 a year, that premium is very different. So you want to segregate the category. So small business owners that are listening, that's that's one technique to get everyone fully covered, but have 2 different classes of disability. All right, so let's go back to buying more. So we had a client, airline pilot client that said, hey, his grandfather had this medical issue. His dad had this medical issue. Chances are he, in the next 15 years, he's a young guy, could also have the same medical issues, hereditary. He wants to make sure that he's got coverage.
Yes.
Because he could pass all the tests now.
Right.
Right. So we started looking. It was very interesting that in his situation, he didn't feel like 50% was enough. He wanted to close that gap. Like a Harvey White policy, even at he was middle-aged, I guess, or almost middle-aged. It was going to be about $350 a month.
Mm-hmm.
And then that's not a level premium. As you get older, you have to pay a little higher depending on how far you take out the policy.
Yeah.
They had policies that would go 10 years, 20 years. There's policies to go all the way to retirement. Those are really expensive, like $600 a month.
Right.
So when you start going down this road and you start looking at these supplemental policies, they're not cheap.
Yeah.
So, and even the Airline Pilots Association, their policies, I would not call them cheap. If you're young, they're cheap. Yeah. But when you really start thinking about this stuff in your 40s, when you're not invincible anymore, it's not going to be, it's probably easier to figure out a way to live on 50% of your income than it is to have to pay monthly for these things.
Well, and this is a good point, especially if you have something medically in your family and you know this.
Yeah.
And the insurance is expensive. Maybe you split it. Maybe you do cut back expenses, but you do buy the insurance for now. And then you just save as much as possible and invest as much as possible and live, Yeah. I'm not saying don't live. We have to live today too, but there's a good balance there, and that way you just know that you need to save more. You can always reduce the insurance or cancel it later. It's just harder to get later.
Yeah, correct.
So
every family is going to have their own unique challenges. I would argue that if I had a stay-at-home spouse, that you probably would want to pay the premium.
Absolutely. Because you're the sole income provider. And if it goes away, then you're having to make up that difference.
Yeah. That's just like anything else in financial planning. There's not general advice that you can give. It really comes down to each individual family.
Right.
It's really hard to give advice to the masses other than this is something that should be addressed in your financial planning. And I think most companies are not looking at it.
I say the common denominator. Yeah.
Or you talk to an insurance agent and they want to sell you everything. Right. And so you should not get disability advice from the person who's selling the disability policy.
Right. You should see how much you actually need.
That's a huge conflict of interest.
Well, I tell you the common denominator in all of those things. How much do I need to retire? How much life insurance do I need? How much all of it has to do with your spending and your saving. How much do you spend? How much do you save?
Right.
So if you're a good saver and you don't spend that much, percentage wise, then maybe you don't eat as much because you saved a lot. It just depends where you are in that cycle.
Sure.
It just completely depends. So to your point, it's not one size fits all. It can't be because somebody over here may be spending 90% of what they're making and somebody over here is spending 40% of what they're making. So that means they're saving a whole lot.
Yeah.
And they're, maybe their expenses are reasonable, but what is reasonable depends how much they're making, I suppose, percentage wise. So it has to be customized and everyone has different situations with how many children or illnesses or, every situation's different.
I mean, think about this. Like, so what if you had a young person who was coming in, who had some debt to eliminate, was a young pilot, but they're living on almost all their money. I mean, would you, and there was a need for this, would you say you should buy additional disability or would you focus on the other things first?
That is hard. I think it would depend if they're married, have children, all of those things. But we know that their income is increasing exponentially in the next couple of years. So I would say focus on paying on the debt in that situation. Yeah. If they're a young pilot and generally healthy, if they're so early in their career, they may have to retrain to do something else. Eventually. I mean, if you're in your early 20s or mid 20s, it may be that you train to do because you have a whole life ahead of you.
So go back to change it to it's a mid-career pilot who's the primary breadwinner in their family.
Yeah, I would. that's in debt.
Yeah.
I would say cut back on expenses, but add the insurance. Do
Yeah,
both, but
do
cut
both.
back on expenses, and that in and of itself would help pay down the debt.
Yeah.
I mean, you'd have to do both. That's where that is hard. Hard conversations have to be had.
Right.
But the stress of debt and just living in that situation anyway, that just eats away at your health.
Yeah. True.
That can drive you towards more disability, just the stress of that.
Right.
Just stress of being in debt. Now, sometimes you can't help it because something happens, or, it's not like they may not just be overspenders. It could have been another situation that was out of their control. You just have, or something. You just have to work through that.
Yeah.
The only way out of that is through, and it's hard. That's where, you won't be in that situation again if you go through that, because you're going to work your way out of that, hopefully, and realize how hard it is.
One thing I want to note that we haven't covered yet is the in the Delta world, you have DPMA for the first year. You get 2 years worth of it. So if you come back to work, but something happens, you have to go back out. You can get another year.
Just not consecutive.
Yeah. But the Harvey Wyatt and the Alpha policies, they pay on top of the Delta policies.
Right.
So you're not doing one or the other, where sometimes policies like, well, they have to pay out first and then we'll only cover up to the difference when up to a maximum. That's not what's happening here. You can cover a good chunk of your income. So if you're getting 50% covered and you're going to buy another 20 or 25% or 30%, you can do that
on top of.
I don't think they'll let you go over 100% of your.
They will not. They will not. And no insurance companies will do that. They see what other policies you have and you can't go over, because then you're not incentivized to work.
Right. Exactly. So just keep that in mind, that these supplemental policies built for pilots are done on top of what your company is paying.
Right.
And probably a good exercise, kind of a boring exercise, but it's a good exercise to go in and understand what actually happens if you're disabled. And the number one place to go is your company's retirement insurance committee. Like everyone, the guys and girls in those committees, they should understand what's happening with this. And then after that, obviously you'd have company resources to go to, probably in your intranet somewhere. There's going to be a chart showing how this works, hopefully.
Yeah.
Or when open enrollment comes around, you're staring at short-term and long-term disability options. Either you're a pilot or not a pilot. That's when you need to address this. When we really started focusing this in our financial planning, I found that our existing clients, been here for years, when I said, send me your short-term disability and long-term disability. Because if you say, do you have it? They say yes. And then when I ask, I'll say, well, send me the details. And when they send me the details, a lot of the email responses were, hey, I thought I had it, but I have to elect it during open enrollment and I didn't do it. So then my team sent a scheduled email for October of whatever year, it could be 8 months away. It says, don't forget to sign up for short-term, long-term disability during your open enrollment.
Yes.
Right? So we have lots of scheduled emails to remind people during open enrollment that they need to make some changes. Now, I know specifically in the Delta plan, you're not making any changes in open enrollment because this is all set for you.
Right.
Southwest plan, I know that you have lots of options inside open enrollment, and it goes from very inexpensive to very expensive. Same way with other airlines, you have to make these choices during open enrollment periods.
Yeah.
So that's a good time to evaluate that. Open enrollment should not be a period where what's the cheapest I can get all this stuff.
No.
Right.
No. Making sure you have enough coverage.
This is things that a good financial planner is focusing on, because we know that we have our clients on track for retirement, but what are all the things that can derail
the plan?
Derail the plan. And it's not just dying. It's stuff like this too.
Absolutely.
So I think some of our action items for pilots is, hey, go and understand what your policies are, review these policies, identify that if there's any gaps. Remember, if you're disabled, you're probably not riding your jet skis. You're probably not doing all these different things, right? You probably focus on your health, I would think.
Yeah.
So in that case, maybe your costs come way down, and that's good.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Or otherwise you need to figure out, hey, how do I eliminate some of this debt? Maybe my mortgage is too big. Maybe I need to be rethinking about some big picture stuff and make things a little more conservative for me, so that if I get in trouble, then I have a much easier time of it.
Yeah.
Instead of being disabled and having to sell my home.
Right. Right. During that time period.
Obviously, speaking with your financial advisor who understands aviation, right? All of our advisors here are well versed. We were joking yesterday. I can't do this. I don't think I'll get in trouble with the SEC, but we should have like our own designation for all our advisors, especially our new ones, and say that they're pilot, they're pilot certified pilot advisors, right?
Right. Oh, there you go. CPA. Oh, that'd be CPA. I don't know.
Yeah, right. So yeah, that's true.
We'll have to come up with another
maybe
acronym.
Be Wiser. Put a W in front of it. Wiser certified pilot advisors.
There you go. I don't know why you can't do that.
Well, if you use it in marketing, I think that's where people will get a little cross.
Right.
but yes, all of our pilots here, or all of our advisors here, have been well versed in pilot lingo. Nobody's going to ask you what route you flew. I think the most common thing recently that I've heard about in our meetings has been pilots being told by other advisors that their 401k contributions aren't correct, and they contact HR to get the real number. I'm like, no, they actually do put
17,
18% in there. That's a real thing. And they don't understand it. And that's when they end up calling us going, hey, I saw you on a chat board, or listen to your podcast, and I need to come in and talk to you because no one understands this lifestyle. Probably the biggest one, there's a really nice family, son's a Delta pilot, dad's a Delta chief pilot. And he told me that he had a niece or something at Northwestern Mutual that told him to stop contributing to his 401k plan altogether, and then take all the money and put it into a whole life policy. He's like, I listened to a few of your podcasts. This didn't sound right. So I thought I'd just call you up and go through your planning service.
Oh, that just makes me cringe.
And I kind of forgot about it. And at the end of the session, we do it over 3 meetings. So at the end of the 3rd meeting, he kind of joked and said, so you don't think I should buy this whole life insurance policy? I was like, no, absolutely not.
You don't even have to tell them. They figure it out during the process. They don't want their money locked up, right?
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, so if you want to get quotes for Harvey Water Alpa is really easy. You go to your Alpa login. It'll have a couple different options. One is like a 10-year payout. The other one's a longer term payout. And then Harvey Watt has they actually have a tool on their website. You can get your own quote without having to talk to anybody.
Yeah.
And it'll tell you approximately how much a monthly benefit would be. We don't obviously aren't endorsing any of those companies. I'm unfamiliar with any other company that would cover a pilot. That's the only reason why we're talking about those.
Right.
Or they'll cover a pilot, but they won't cover your medical,
right,
loss of medical.
Right.
That's a big deal.
Right.
And then really, if you don't have a financial plan, you really should have one. We did 157 pilot plans last year. These are now 157 families that have a clear path and blueprint going forward. Probably another 100 pilots came in and refreshed their plans, which is really important. You do that every year or 2 years, and just know that this stuff is in place and you don't have to worry about it. Go live your best life. Right. But you got to do some adult stuff in the process. Anyway, anything else to add, Shauna?
No, I think that was great.
You, Michaela, work with a lot of pilots.
We do.
Every time I walk by, I was like, I think I recognize that guy. All right. So thanks for listening to today's episode. If you're interested in learning more about Wiser Wealth Management, I want to schedule a consultation, meet with one of our fiduciary financial advisors. You can do so by going to wiserinvestor.com or click the link in the episode notes. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you guys again next week.
Thanks for listening to a Wiser Retirement podcast. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. Make sure to subscribe wherever you're listening. That way you don't miss any new episodes. We'd also appreciate if you could leave a rating and review. If you have any questions about anything that was discussed today, head to wiserinvestor.com and reach out. This podcast is strictly for informational purposes only and is not to be considered as investment advice or solicitation to buy or sell any financial products, securities, digital assets, or any other investment vehicles, or a basis to make any financial decisions. Wiser Wealth Management Incorporated is a registered investor advisor with the SEC. The host and/or guests may personally own securities, digital assets, or other investment vehicles mentioned on this podcast. Neither the host nor guests of the show are compensated for their participation, and no referral fees are paid to or received by any host or guest for clients, listeners, or similar interests. Investments involve risk, and unless otherwise stated, are not guaranteed. Be sure to first consult with a qualified financial advisor, tax professional, insurance professional, and/or legal professional before implementing any strategy discussed herein. Past performance is not indicative of future performance.